I have a question for you. How many of you remember the Macarena? Okay. It's mostly older people, I'm noticing. Okay. Well, what does dancing the Macarena have in common with the Christian life? Think about that for a second. Now, I listened to it this week in English. I promise you the lyrics have nothing to do with it. You know, the translated lyrics, I didn't even know what that song was about. You know, but the dance does have something to do. Let's watch a segment of it. And you guys can dance if you like. There we go. I knew some of you would. All right. This is church. Okay, okay. So here's the thing. Okay, when you dance the Macarena, you do what the leader does, right? Yeah. And you do it in the same way that the leader does it. Okay, it's like the children's game of what? Follow the leader. Follow the leader, right? And when you play follow the leader, you know, the children's game involves not only physically doing whatever, you know, the leader's doing, right? But you also have to go wherever. Eddie, Joe, come on, let's play follow the leader. So you have to, you know, follow me. You go wherever I go, and you do it the way I do it, right? Before we get hurt.
No.
Get out of here. So it involves movement, right? It involves imitation, right? That's the idea, right? And from that silliness, okay, you can get a sincere intention from it, and actually, I would say a prayer that can come from that. And it's simply this: Lord, help us to do what you want us to do, and also to do it in the way that you want us to do it. Right? Amen. Make sense? A simple game of follow the leader. And we've been going through the book of Ephesians, and we've been talking about the fact that the structure of the 6th chapter letter, okay, that Paul wrote to this group of Christians in Ephesus, and it provides, there's a structure that we've been using to understand the book, but it also provides a structure to understand our lives as well. And the first, it involves 3 obedience commands, okay? So we're shifting over to dogs now, okay? It involves, the first one is what? Do you guys remember? Sit. That's a basic command, right? Yeah. You say, sit. You guys are really good at this. Yeah, that's good. Good job. And you guys are doing really good. Now, scratch behind your ear, you know, and give you a treat, right? That's the first 3 chapters. And I'd argue that that's kind of the foundation of the Christian life. And what are we sitting in? We're sitting in what Jesus has done for us. We're sitting in his acceptance. We're sitting in his compassion, okay? He's given us, it says every spiritual blessing that's possible, he's bestowed upon us, okay? And there's nothing you could do to earn that. So you just rest in it and you say, thank you. Thank you. There's nothing I could do to earn that. I just sit in this, in his love, in his compassion, and in his acceptance. And then the second command, which is found in chapters 4 and 5, basically, in the book of Ephesians, it has to do with wherever he goes, you go, okay? And you walk with him in the same way. It's follow the leader, okay? And that command is, first it was sit, now it's heal, okay? Come alongside me, and wherever I lead you, okay, that's where we're going to go, okay? I'm the leader, okay, is what God is saying to us. And then you come alongside me, and you're also going to walk in the way of love, okay? That you're going to do life the way I want you to do it. You're going to heal, okay? That's the second command. It's part of the structure of the book, but it's also the big idea behind being a Christian, being a Christ follower, okay? And then the last one we're going to look at in a few weeks is the command stay. Because sometimes, kind of like fireworks in Valley Center with your dog, the dog freaks out when he hears them going off, and they want to run, right? They bolt because they get scared, right? And stuff. Sometimes you get scared and you want to run, and sometimes you just don't want to keep going, right? You don't want to hang in there. You don't want to persevere anymore. And chapter 6 has this element to it that talks about the secret to persevering, to staying, and to finishing well. Okay, this life that God has called us to. So that's the basic idea that we're kind of applying here in these weeks. And so this week, again, we're on heal. Last week we talked about healing our mouth, okay, by brushing our tongue, okay? And today we're going to talk about healing, again, by playing follow the leader. And in chapter 5, Paul continues this idea, and he says this. He tells them to play this game, follow the leader. He says, imitate God. Imitate God in everything you do, okay? Because you are his dear children. Sit in that acceptance that you have, that love that you have, like a child's, the love they receive from their parent. And then he says this in verse 2, he says, live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ, following him, okay? He loved us, and it was a major kind of love. It was a sacrificial kind of love. He says he loved us, offering himself as a sacrifice for us, okay? So we have that forgiveness and that acceptance from God, and that was pleasing to God. So he's telling us to live life, to heal, to live life the way he did it, okay? And so the outline of basically the first 8 verses, okay, the understanding, I'm not going to read it all, but the first 8 verses of chapter 5 is verse 1 is we heal ourselves to our master by imitating him in everything we do, okay? And then verse 2, follow Christ's example, okay? By walking through this world with a life that's willing to sacrifice for other people in the effort to love them, and show love to them. Why? Because of his mercy and grace. In verse 3, we're sitting with him in the heavenly places. So live a pattern. He gets into the idea of living with morality, with personal morality. Okay, because you're up here with Christ in the heavenly places. That's where you're seated. We saw that in the previous chapters. Okay, and he says, so living an immoral life is basically beneath you. It's beneath you to do so, okay? So do the best you can. You're going to do it imperfectly, okay? But strive to do that. And in verse 4 talks about living with thankfulness to God for all that he's done for us, okay? And then he talks in verses 5 and 6 that if there are people in your life that are influencing you, okay, that aren't living according to this pattern of life, you got to distance yourself from them. You can't. It's kind of like the friends you keep sometimes are the ones that rub off on you. And he says, surround yourself with people that are committed to this kind of practice as well, and so you keep your right perspective, okay? And then in verses 7 and 8, the bottom line is, he says, you were once in darkness, okay, but now you are living in light. Okay, and so, because you're with him, you're seated with him in the heavenly places. So heal, and when you see darkness in the world, don't curse the darkness. Bring the light into the darkness. Bring the light into the darkness. Be a positive influence in our world. So that's the idea, the first part of it. And so now here's the thing. Understand what I mean when I say this. There are a lot of different Jesuses out there. Okay. Now, when I say that, I know that there's only one. Okay. Okay. But the idea is pretty simple. We tend to have our own ideas about who Jesus is. Okay. And that's one of the reasons we have the scriptures to help straighten out our understandings and stuff. So the Jesus we're supposed to follow is full of love, sacrificial love, and light. Okay, that's the Jesus we follow, okay? The problem today is, and it's always been a problem, okay, we're going to see that today, is that we tend to imagine a Jesus, it's human nature, that he loves everything we love. Right? And oh, by the way, he tends to hate the things that we hate. Somebody said it was a very astute comment. They said, if God hates all the same, if you think God hates all the same people you hate, you've created God in your own image. Okay? And that's a really important thing, Because we have to follow the right Jesus. Do you understand how I mean that? Okay, that not your preconceived ideas, okay, but the one that's revealed to us in his word. Okay, and this is nothing new. People do this all the time. Okay, they say, well, turning the other cheek doesn't work anymore. Whoa, 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 whoa. Think about who said that. Loving your enemies. We have to rise up. Whoa, 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 whoa. Think about what he said. Love your enemies. Okay, that's hard to do. That's like graduate school love, right? And that's tough. Okay. But it was also true in the first century. It's nothing new, okay? I want to kind of just give you a little history lesson in this middle part of the message here. In the first century, the world that Jesus entered into, it was divided and fractured. Did you know that? I mean, there was divisions everywhere, okay? And there were at least 3 groups that wanted a political Jesus. That's what they wanted, okay? And so they wanted him to align with their interests, okay? And the groups were called the Sadducees, the Herodians, and the Zealots. Okay? The Sadducees, they didn't believe in the afterlife, and that's why they were sad, you see. Because they had no hope. Okay? But they were influential, they were quasi-religious, okay? And they cozied up to the occupying Roman forces and stuff. And they longed for Jesus to align himself with them, okay? And then there were the Herodians. We don't know much about them, but the name is after the king, the Roman king that was in that area, and they were fully aligned with the new political structure that came in. They were sellouts, basically, to the nation. And both the Sadducees and the Herodians were political insiders who benefited from this outside force that had come and occupied the country. Does that make sense? They benefited from it, and so they wanted it to stay status quo. They wanted it to stay the same. They didn't really want it to change. And here comes this guy Jesus coming along, and he's stirring the pot. So they were upset about that, okay? And so there was those groups, and then there was this other group called the Zealots. And they dreamed of an insurrection. They were zealous to get these Romans out of there. It was mostly like sitting in the pubs and, talking treason, because they didn't really do much. They didn't have a chance against this huge, army that was occupying their land. But they wanted Jesus to use his oratory, his power, and his popularity to create a rebellion. Okay, so these groups that wanted this political Jesus, the truth is, if you read the scriptures, you find out that they were not really interested in following Jesus. Okay. They really were interested in having Jesus follow them, right? Become a part of their preconceived cause. Well, he wanted nothing to do with that, okay? And then there was these other groups. They were very different from each other. There was these nationalistic culture warriors, okay? God, thank you, God, that we don't have nationalistic culture warriors anymore, right? Okay, and, well, it was in the first century, too. Okay, it's nothing new, okay? And the Pharisees and the Essenes, they wanted to enlist Jesus in their cause, okay, and to restore their country's values, okay, and they wanted him to help counter the cultural drift that they saw coming into their nation. And you see, first they were ruled by the Greeks, then they were ruled by the Romans, and they not only brought in just all this these laws and all this kind of stuff, but they also brought ideas, fashions even. Parents would name their kids with Roman and Greek names sometimes, and these other changes that were people were like, I want things to be like they were before, okay? And these groups, so let's talk about the Essenes first, okay? The Essenes, they were very different from the Pharisees. They were devout, and they were more passive in their approach to Jesus, okay? They wanted him to get on board, and they really wanted to see the spiritual renewal that he was promising, that he was trying to bring into the country. They wanted to see that succeed. But they looked at what was going on in their nation, and they were just kind of disgusted by it. And so they moved to these really remote places like Ranchita and places like that, just to get away from the world, and stuff. And so they actually literally set up communes in remote places, and kind of homeschooled and kept to themselves. Okay? And they kept to themselves, and they prayed that God would work in the world. They really didn't expect much from Jesus. They didn't demand anything from him, okay? But then there were the Pharisees, okay? They wanted Jesus to use his popularity, his influence, his miraculous powers, okay, to promote an Israel-first agenda to restore the nation to its previous glory, okay? And the Pharisees were the real players. They were aggressive, okay? And they were cultural and religious conservatives who were willing to do just about anything to win the cultural war. Okay, they were devout for sure. Okay, and they were the ideological enemies of the Sadducees and the Herodians. Okay, these political players. Okay, but when it was politically expedient, okay, the Pharisees were willing to align themselves with their ideological enemies. Okay, in order to achieve their main purposes. As a matter of fact, they even plotted murder, the murder of Jesus. Okay, to achieve their moralistic goals. The ends justify the means. Aren't you glad we don't have people like that in the world anymore? Okay? So what I'm telling you is that's what Jesus dealt with in the ancient world, okay? And us moderns, we're nothing but a bunch of cavemen dressed up in spacesuits, okay? People are people. People have always been people. People have always had these kinds of things, okay? But Paul calls us, in the book of Ephesians, to follow the real Jesus. Okay, I'm going to call it the real Jesus, okay? He says, imitate God in everything you do. Live a life filled with sacrificial love, okay, for other people, okay? Following the example of Christ, okay? And now, this is an echo of something that Jesus said. Now, more than once, Jesus talked about this idea of playing follow the leader with him and what was involved in that. And he talked about this idea of sacrificial love in the imagery with which he spoke about it. And you see, because even those who were his closest followers, they had a really hard time understanding who the real Jesus was. Okay, it was laborious for him to instruct these guys. It was hard for him to get through to them who he really was and what he was really about, even the people that traveled with them all the time. Let me give you an example from the Gospel of Mark in chapter 8, starting in verse 27. It says, Jesus and his disciples went to the villages around this one region, Caesarea Philippi. And on the way, Jesus asked, hey, what do the public opinions polls say? He says, who do people say that I am? Okay, what's the scuttlebutt? What are people saying about me? Okay, and so the disciples told Jesus what the popular ideas were that were current, and these are going to be more like the religious, faith-based ideas about who he might be. Okay, and they replied, well, some say you're like John the Baptist, and other people say you're Elijah. Okay, one of the greatest prophets. And other people say you're just one of the prophets, but we haven't had a prophet in a long time, and so they're really intrigued by you. And so John the Baptist, I don't know if you know who he was. He was the one that prepared the way for Jesus, okay, and then diminished and went away and was killed actually. And so it's kind of like you're another reformer that's come in. You're kind of almost like a reincarnation of John the Baptist, that you come in and you're trying to restore spiritually the country like he did, okay? And other people are saying you're like Elijah, okay, one of the greatest prophets and of the Old Testament era. And there was this promise that Elijah, someone like Elijah, was going to come and prepare the way for this person called the Messiah, who we're going to talk about in a second. Okay, and so the option 2 was Jesus was this one we were expecting to come. Okay, the prophets talked about, and then the third one is, you know, it'd been 400 years since a prophet had emerged in Israel, and so people were blown away the way Jesus talked and the way he confronted some of the religious leadership, and like the prophets did, but he was just more like a run-of-the-mill prophet. But then Jesus asked him, he says, but what about you? Who do you say that I am? What's your opinion of me? And Peter answered for the group, and he said, you're the Christ. You're the Messiah, okay? This one that was, the Christ is like this, it's the idea of this anointed one that was going to come in and make things all right in the world. He was going to bring reform. He was going to create paradise on earth. And this anointed one that God, he's like an Old Testament priest and king mixed together, that was going to set up God's kingdom in this world. And we think you're the one that's set apart for that service, and you're the one that's going to bring this and stuff. And then Jesus warned them, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. Now, why did he say that? I think he said that because there were all these different opinions about him. Everybody had their idea of who the Messiah was going to be, and they were going to try to make that align with their own preconceived, whether it's a political ideology, a moralistic ideology, a values thing, or whatever it is. He said they're going to try to align me with that. Okay, and then he started referring to himself as the Son of Man. Okay, he didn't want to use the term Christ or title. Why? Because there was so much baggage that came with it. Okay, he had to come up with a different way of expressing it. It really meant the same thing. Okay, but this was Jesus' favorite way of referring to himself, because it kind of sidestepped all these ideas that were floating around out there, and without all the baggage of what that might mean. And so he continued this laborious process of trying to re-educate these guys. And he says this, then he began to teach them that the Son of Man, okay, here's the real Jesus, that he must suffer many things, that he will be rejected by the religious establishment, the elders and the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed. That's what it means to be the Christ. That's what it means to be the Messiah. And after 3 days, he will rise again. Now, those ideas were completely against the popular ideas of who this person that God was going to send into the world was going to be. They just viewed him as being this triumphant one that was going to enter in and just kill all God's enemies and set up his kingdom, just like, done. They didn't understand that, no, this one had to come and do the deed and die on the cross and suffer and be rejected by the religious establishment. And then he started speaking really plainly about everything to his disciples, and it completely freaked Peter out. Okay? He's like, what are you doing? He's looking at the guys, and he pulls Jesus aside, and he started rebuking Jesus. He started telling Jesus, no, you can't talk like that. You're freaking everybody out. You're talking about dying and suffering and all this kind of stuff. That's not what the Messiah does. And check this out. Jesus turned and he saw that the other disciples were watching this interchange. And he's like, okay, I got to deal with this. And he said this to Peter. He said, get behind me, Satan. Whoa. This is like one of his top followers. And he's saying, get behind me, Satan. That's pretty heavy. Agreed? Yes. Okay, and he said, you do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men. Okay? Kind of like, you're not going to tell me what my job is. You're not going to tell me who the real me is. Okay? And this idea, but for Peter and for most of the people in the culture, this idea of a suffering servant was unthinkable. Okay? And he was supposed to be strong, not weak. And Peter was asking him to do what he had to do, but bypassing the death that was required for the penalty of our sins. Okay, so that we could have the forgiveness that God wanted to offer us and stuff. And what Peter was really doing was he was doing, if you're familiar with the temptation in the wilderness, Satan came to Jesus and tried to get him to establish himself as a world leader, okay, but bypassing the cross. Okay, bypassing the suffering and the death. So when Jesus rebuked Peter, okay, he was seeking to move him from a man-centered outlook to a God-centered point of view. That's what he was trying to do. He turned, looked at the disciples, rebuked Peter. He said, get behind me. You don't have in mind the things of God. You do not have a Godward point of view. You're looking at life through a lens that everybody looks through. Okay, it's a different idea. You need a corrective lens to see God's perspective on what I've come to do and who I am. Make sense? And then he said, you need to let go of this vision for self-preservation, okay? And understand that real power is found in self-sacrifice. You need to move from a position of self-gratification to a position of self-denial, okay? And he said this, he moved beyond the disciples that he was interacting with, and he called this greater crowd together, okay, because he wanted to get this to the whole crowd. And he said this, if anyone wants to come after me, play follow the leader with me, okay? You want to play follow the leader? Okay, this is what it looks like. You have to deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me, okay? Playing follow the leader, he says, involves bearing your own cross. Now, I know guys that are having trouble in their marriage and they'll say, yeah, she's my cross, man. You know, I have to bear, right? That's not what he means, okay? That's not what he's talking about. It's this idea of self-denial, okay? There's a bridge. I've never been to Venice, but I've read about this bridge. It's called the Bridge of Sighs. And the canals run all through Venice. And there's a courthouse, okay? Place of judgment, okay? And then there's a place of execution across this Bridge of Sighs. And what happened was when a condemned prisoner would get a sentence of condemnation, okay, they would have to walk over that bridge, okay, and go to the place where the execution was going to be carried out. And the saying was, when they walked over the bridge, they sighed because they knew their life was over, okay? And I think that's kind of the idea behind this idea of cross bearing, but it's a little bit different. The idea is when in Jesus' day, when someone bore a cross, when Jesus bore his cross, okay, he went from the place of judgment, okay, in the city, and then he had to carry the cross member of that was going to be attached to the upright, okay, he had to carry it through the city out to the place of execution. And when a condemned man walked through the city, he might walk by his house, right? He might walk to see his loved ones, his friends. He might walk by his place of business, okay? And all of those things in that moment are still his, right? Okay? But what's the point of view and the perspective on those things now? It's completely different, right? Because I'm bearing my cross and I know where I'm going. And I think there's an idea there that Jesus is getting to. It's this idea that, yeah, you still have your possessions. You still have those people that love you and that you love. You still have your friends. You still have all these things, okay? And all that's still yours. Your job, your career, all that stuff is still yours. But when you bear the cross, you pick up the cross, now those things come into a different perspective, okay? They're still yours, but maybe they're not quite as important. You don't understand what I mean? That there's a bigger agenda that's been set for your life, okay? That overrides some of the other pressures and things that you might be feeling, okay? When it comes to your financial resources, when it comes to your time, when it comes to where you place your energies, you're now going to invest it because someone else has set your agenda in life. Someone else has set your purpose in life. You're living for something greater and bigger. You're learning how to live a life of sacrificial love. If anyone come after me, wants to play follow the leader, you have to deny yourself, take up your cross, and then you can follow me. Because that's the example that I set. Make sense? Okay? And then he says this, you have to move from a vision of self-preservation to one of self-sacrifice. In verse 35, he says, for whoever wants to save his life is going to lose it. Do you get to save your life? Nope. Nope. Have you looked in the mirror lately, some of you? Yeah. It's just like, nope, don't get to keep it. Okay? And he says, but whoever loses his life for me will take up this agenda. Okay? And for the gospel, the good news, this purpose that I give you to live for, you will save your life. You're going to move from a short-term investing point of view to a long-term investing point of view. Because he says this, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world, okay, and yet forfeit his soul, okay? What can you give in exchange for your soul, for who you are, really, okay? And when I read this, I think about the difference between seagulls and geese, okay? Because my mind goes in weird directions. But seagulls, you ever watch seagulls? Seagulls they tell us in the Bible not to eat them. Never been tempted, okay? They fight for scraps of garbage, right? They're always squawking, and they're non-cooperative, right? They're angry all the time, and they're competitive, and they're just just fighting for that scrap and at the beach or whatever. Whereas geese, when they migrate, what do? They get in line, right? And they fly, and there's order there, right? And there's some order there. And here's the thing, geese. I mean, we can't interview a goose to say, hey, why do you honk? But the idea that most scientists think is it's more like the idea of encouragement. We can do this, guys. Honk, honk. Keep going. I know honk. We got a long way to go. Honk, honk. And then what do geese do when they're in flight? When they're in that V? They switch places, right? Some of them will go to the front. Okay, and what are they doing? They're cutting the air, they're cutting the wind, making it easier on the ones that are trailing behind. Okay, and they're cutting through. And then, hey man, honk, I'm getting tired, honk. And then the guy in the back comes around and honk. I got it, man. And they keep going. They keep going. Live a life of, instead of just trying to preserve yourself. Okay, live a life that is willing to sacrifice for the well-being of other people, okay? Get off the road that leads to shame. Jesus concludes this discussion. He says, if anyone's ashamed of me and my words in this sinful generation, the Son of Man, okay, will be ashamed of him when he comes in his Father's glory, okay, with his holy angels. Because he is going to come to set up that kingdom, okay? It was just there's more of a progression to the idea. And when I read those words, I'm reminded of, sometimes I hear people say, because of this cultural war we're in, the turning the other cheek, we're not doing that anymore. In the name of God, we got to get them. Loving your enemies doesn't accomplish anything. Whoa, 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 whoa. Are you ashamed of what he said? Are you saying you know more? Are you saying, what are you saying? Who's in charge here, guys? And what I'm saying is, and guys, every once in a while I talk about this kind of stuff, what's going on in our culture, because the job of the church is super important. We got to get this right. People's souls are at stake. Okay, their very lives, their very eternities are at stake, and we can't compromise. Okay, we've received, what we sit in is we sit in God's acceptance. Okay, He accepted us in our as-is, used condition. Okay, no guarantees. Look at, and we accept others as a result because He accepted us. We sit in His compassion. Why do we love other people? Why? Because He loved us. We're not that great, and He loved us anyway. If you think you're that great, talk to somebody that knows you, okay? And you find truth, okay? Truth, you find freedom in truth, okay? Because truth has set us free. Within a blanket of compassion and acceptance, you speak truth into someone's life to help them, okay? And the church, it plays this role, okay? And it's super important that we get this absolutely right, that we serve those around us. Let's pray together. Father, teach us to follow the example that you set of sacrificial love. Lord, this morning, as best we know how, we recommit ourselves to following you and healing our behavior, healing our attitudes, to come alongside you. And Lord, we pray that you teach us what living with sacrificial looks like in our unique circumstances. Remind us to follow your example and to heal. Remind us to walk with you wherever you lead and to imitate your sacrificial love in our attitudes and our behavior. Lord, you know that it's difficult for us sometimes, and we thank you that we still have your acceptance, compassion. Teach us how to walk in it. In your name, amen.